One of the most shared articles on X right now is a warning about AI. At Matt Schumer _. Yes, you've probably seen it, or one like it. Tons of likes, millions of impressions. I read it and yeah, I shared it. These articles are everywhere, and they're getting more attention than almost anything else on X. I get why. The fear is visceral. When you watch a chatbot produce in 30 seconds what used to take you a full day or more, something primal fires in your brain. A survival instinct. I'm about to become irrelevant. I'm not going to argue that those articles are wrong about everything. AI is powerful. It is moving fast. The disruption is real. And I take the concerns seriously. But I am going to tell you that the fear you're feeling right now, that sinking sense that the rug is being pulled out from under you, is one of the oldest and most consistently wrong reactions in human history. It has a name, it has a pattern, and it has a track record of being spectacularly, almost comically, incorrect. Not once or twice, like every single time. I want to walk you through why almost everyone gets this wrong, what history actually shows us, and how a 200-year-old insight from a French economist can completely reframe how you think about AI, your career, and the future. This is going to be comprehensive, but it'll be the antidote you can share with friends who are freaking out a bit. The seen and the unseen. Understood. Here is the text verbatim. There is only one difference between a bad economist and a good one. The bad economist confines himself to the visible effect. The good economist takes into account both the effect that can be seen and those effects that must be foreseen. Frédéric Bastiat, 1850. This single idea, written over 175 years ago, is the master key to understanding every AI doomer headline you've ever read. Call it the seen and the unseen. It's devastatingly simple. When a new technology arrives, certain effects are immediately visible. You can see the assembly line worker whose job has just been automated. You can see the copywriter watching Grok produce in seconds what used to take her hours. You can see the customer service team being replaced by a chatbot built with Claude code in a matter of minutes. This is the seen. It's tangible, it's emotional, it has a human face, and it makes for incredible content because fear and loss are among the most powerful drivers of engagement. This is exactly why those doom articles get millions of impressions. Fear is viral. Opportunity is not. Hence, this article will get far fewer shares. Help fix that by reposting it. But there is a second category of effects. The ones Bastiat said emerge only subsequently. These are the unseen, the new industries that don't exist yet, the businesses that become possible only because costs have dropped, the creative work that gets unlocked when drudgery disappears, the entrepreneur who can now build alone what used to require a team of 20, the consumer who now has access to something that was previously unaffordable. The unseen is, by definition, harder to see. That's the whole point. And it's why the bad economist, or the bad forecaster, or the panicked scrolling reader always gets it wrong. They stare at the scene, extrapolate doom, and completely miss the explosion of new opportunity forming just outside their field of vision. I consider this the critical thinking error of our time. And it's not limited to economists or pundits. It affects how you are probably thinking about your own career right now. When you read a headline that says, AI will replace 40% of jobs, your brain does something very specific. It imagines 40% of current workers losing their current jobs and sitting idle. It does not, it cannot, simultaneously imagine the new roles, new industries, and new forms of value that will be created. Because those things don't exist yet. I don't think this is a failure of intelligence per se. It's more a failure of imagination that is baked into how human cognition works. We're wired to respond to visible threats. We are not wired to anticipate invisible opportunities. But history can show us what our imagination can't. And history's record on this is unambiguous. 2. A queen, a clergyman, and a knitting machine. In 1589, an English clergyman named William Lee invented something remarkable, a mechanical knitting frame that could produce stockings far faster than any human hand. He brought it to Queen Elizabeth I, hoping for a royal patent. She refused. In a story recorded centuries later, Elizabeth I is said to have told William Lee, "Thou aimest high, Master Lee. It would assuredly bring to hand knitters ruin by depriving them of employment, thus making them beggars." Read that again. A monarch, reportedly, looked at a machine that would make clothing faster, cheaper, and more accessible to her subjects, and her instinct was to block it. Not because it didn't work, but because it worked too well, because she could see the hand knitters who would lose their immediate livelihood, and she could not see everything that would come after. Lee was forced to flee to France, where he died in poverty, but the technology didn't die with him. His brother brought the knitting frames back to England. The machines spread, and over the next 2 centuries, that very same textile industry, the one Elizabeth tried to protect by freezing it in place, became the engine of the Industrial Revolution. England didn't just keep its textile jobs. It became the wealthiest nation on the planet because of mechanized textile production. The industry grew orders of magnitude beyond what hand knitters could ever have produced. New jobs, new trades, and new entire economic classes emerged that Elizabeth couldn't have fathomed. She saw the hand knitters. She could not see the factory workers, the merchants, the engineers, the shippers, the global trade networks, the rising middle class, and the entire modern economy that the knitting machine helped set in motion. The seen destroyed her judgment, or the unseen would have saved it. 3. The Luddites smashed the future. Fast forward about 220 years from Lee's invention. It's 1811, and in England, in the same textile industry, new machines like power looms and shearing frames are arriving in factories and producing cloth faster and cheaper than skilled artisans can by hand. The craftsmen are terrified. They had spent years in apprenticeships. They had families to provide for. And now a machine operated by a child could produce in a day what took them a week. So they organized and called themselves the Luddites, after a perhaps mythical apprentice named Ned Ludd, who had smashed a stocking frame in a fit of rage. They launched a campaign of nighttime raids, breaking into factories, destroying hundreds of machines with sledgehammers, and burning mills to the ground. Parliament made machine breaking a capital offense. At one point, the British government deployed thousands of soldiers to fight the Luddites. The Luddites were crushed, and the machines stayed. So what happened next? The British textile industry didn't shrink, it exploded. By the end of the century, it employed far more people than it had before mechanization. The cloth was cheaper, so demand soared. Exports created entirely new markets. Supporting industries like shipping, coal, iron, engineering, and finance emerged to serve the growing machine. The Luddites could see their own displacement. They couldn't see the vast expansion of opportunity that was forming just behind it. And now their name is a permanent label, a synonym for someone who fights the future out of fear. It's worth asking, do you want to be remembered the way they are? IV. This pattern never stops. Don't write these stories off as occasional anecdotes from history. It's not that this happened once or twice. It happens every single time. In the 1920s, a book called Social Decay and Regeneration was reviewed by the New York Times under the headline, "Will Machines Devour Man?" illustrated with a drawing of a person being fed into a sausage-making machine. The president of the Rockefeller Foundation asked at a commencement speech whether education could run fast enough to beat the machines. What followed that decade of fear? Mass electrification, the automobile revolution, aviation, radio, modern medicine, and vastly more employment, not less. In the 1960s, fears of automation were so intense that President Johnson formed a National Commission on Technology, Automation, and Economic Progress to study whether machines would create permanent mass unemployment. Eisenhower dismissed the panic, noting that the same fears had plagued people for 150 years and always proved groundless. What followed? The post-war boom, the space age, the computing revolution, decades of rising wages, and entirely new industries no one had imagined. When ATMs arrived in the 1970s, everyone was sure bank tellers were finished. A 1973 article predicted they'd eliminate up to 75% of tellers. London bank tellers were reportedly so panicked they snuck out and covered ATM keyboards with honey. What actually happened? Between 1985 and 2002, the U.S. went from 60,000 ATMs to 352,000, and teller employment grew from 485,000 to 527,000. ATMs made branches cheaper to run, so banks opened more branches and shifted tellers into higher-value relationship roles. The technology created more human jobs. When barcode scanners hit retail, people predicted the end of cashiers. The number of cashiers increased. When legal offices adopted electronic discovery software, people predicted the end of paralegals. The number of paralegals increased. When spreadsheet software arrived, people predicted the end of accountants. The accounting profession grew. BTW, the Pessimist's Archive. At Pessimist's Arc, and has been documenting this for years. Worth a follow. Every single time, the pattern is the same. People see what's being disrupted, project catastrophe, and completely fail to foresee the new opportunities, industries, and human flourishing that the technology unlocks. Every single time. The fixed pie delusion. So why do smart people keep getting this wrong? Because of the fixed pie delusion, the deeply ingrained, almost instinctual belief that the economy is a zero-sum game, that there is a fixed amount of work to be done, and if a machine does more of it, humans must do less. This feels intuitively true, I guess. It's also completely, demonstrably false. The economy is not a pie. It's a garden, and technology is rain. When the power loom arrived, the pie wasn't cloth production. The pie expanded to include global textile trade, chemical dyes, synthetic fabrics, fashion as an industry, retail distribution networks, and eventually, fast fashion, e-commerce, and everything that flows from people having access to affordable clothing. When the automobile arrived, the pie wasn't horse transportation. It expanded to include suburbs, highway systems, motels, fast food, drive-in theaters, road trips as a cultural phenomenon, auto insurance, gas stations, auto repair, car washes, and an entire civilization organized around personal mobility. Each technology didn't just redistribute existing value. It created value that didn't exist before. It expanded what was possible, and in that expansion, new work, often better, more interesting, more human work, emerged. It is much easier to imagine someone losing their job to a new technology than it is to imagine many people gaining jobs that haven't been invented yet. Pessimist's Archive. This is Bastiat's insight in its most potent form. The seen, job losses, are vivid and personal. The unseen, job creation in industries that don't yet exist, is abstract and therefore invisible. But invisibility is not the same as non-existence. What I've learned from actually using AI every day. A personal anecdote, if you'll indulge me. I'm not writing this from a theoretical perch. I'm a knowledge worker. So much of what I do is on a computer. Writing, research, analysis, communication, content creation, project management. If you believe the Doom articles, I should be the canary in the coal mine, the first to fall, the guy whose entire job description just got automated. And yet, I've never been busier in my life. I've been aggressively adopting every bleeding-edge AI tool as it comes out. Not cautiously, not wait and see. I jumped in early and I've stayed on the frontier. Every new model, every new capability, I'm testing it against real work within days of release. Here's what I've found, and it directly mirrors Bastiat's insight. The scene. AI can now do many of the tasks I used to spend hours on. First drafts, research synthesis, data analysis, formatting, brainstorming, etc. Things that used to consume much of my workday are now dramatically faster. If you stop the analysis here, you'd conclude I'm about to be out of a job. The unseen. Because those tasks are faster, I've been freed up to do higher order work that I never had time for before. Strategic thinking, deeper creative projects, more relationship building and networking. Building things I'd been putting off for years because the execution cost was too high. And This is the part that I enjoy the most. Having ideas I wouldn't have had otherwise. The tools don't just accelerate existing work. They inspire entirely new work. I'll be using AI on one project, and it'll surface a connection, an angle, an approach that sends me down a path I never would have found on my own. That path leads to a new project, which leads to a new opportunity, which leads to work that didn't exist 6 months ago. I'm writing a new book and launching a major project, all because of something AI unlocked for me last summer. And it'll create a ton of value for the clients we work with. This is the unseen, happening in real time, in my own life. And I see it happening for others around me too. The people I know who are thriving right now are not the ones with the most impressive credentials or the most AI-proof jobs. They're the ones who got curious early and started experimenting. Many of them are doing work today that they couldn't even describe a year ago because it didn't exist a year ago. And this opportunity isn't unique to us. The tools are cheap. Most are free. The learning curve is gentler than any previous technology shift in history. You don't need to be a programmer. You don't need an engineering degree. You need curiosity, a willingness to experiment, and the humility to let a machine handle the parts of your work that it does better than you. The people who will struggle aren't the ones whose jobs change. It's the ones who refuse to change with them, like the modern-day hand knitters, insisting that the old way is the only way, while the future assembles itself around them. VII, but this time is different. Let's anticipate and rebut the most likely objection. Sure, the Luddites were wrong. Sure, ATMs didn't kill bank tellers. But AI is different. It's not just automating physical labor. It's automating thought. It's coming for cognitive work, creative work, the things that were supposed to be uniquely human. This time really is different. Let me take that seriously, because it deserves a serious answer. It's not a dumb objection. It's the strongest version of the pessimist's case, and if I'm going to ask you to reject it, I should show you exactly why. Yes, AI is different in its speed. Previous technological shifts played out over decades. AI is moving in months. That compression is real, and it matters. The adjustment period will be shorter, which means the disruption will feel more intense. Yes, AI is different in its breadth. It touches knowledge work, creative work, and service work simultaneously. A power loom only disrupted one industry. AI is touching all of them at once. That's unprecedented. But here's what AI is not different in. It is still a tool. A power loom was a tool. An automobile was a tool. A computer was a tool. The internet was a tool. Each one automated tasks that people previously did by hand or by brain. Each one was met with existential panic, but each one expanded the pie. The fundamental economic dynamic hasn't changed. When a tool makes something cheaper or faster, demand increases, new applications emerge, and human effort redirects toward higher-order problems that the tool can't solve alone. Think about what happened with the internet. In 1995, people were convinced it would destroy retail, publishing, travel agencies, music, and dozens of other industries. And in a narrow sense, they were right. Specific forms of those industries were disrupted. Some local bookstores did close. The travel agent did lose her job. Video killed the radio star. But the internet didn't shrink the economy. It created a multi-trillion-dollar digital economy, launched millions of businesses, and invented entire job categories like social media manager, UX designer, data scientist, content creator, SEO specialist, cloud architect, app developer, influencer, podcast producer, e-commerce entrepreneur. These and many more jobs literally did not exist before. The pessimists in 1995 could see the bookstore closing. They couldn't see Shopify, YouTube, Stripe, the entire creator economy, remote work as a lifestyle, or the fact that a teenager with a laptop could build a global business from a bedroom. That's what it looks like when you can only see the scene. The "this time is different" argument has also been made every single previous time. The 1960s automation panic specifically centered on the claim that this wave of automation was different from previous ones because machines were now doing mental work, early computing, not just physical work. That was the exact same argument being made today, 60 years ago. Will AI be faster? Yes. Will the transition be bumpy? Absolutely. Will some specific jobs disappear permanently? But will AI shrink the total amount of meaningful human work? Will it lead to mass permanent unemployment? Every piece of evidence from every technological shift in the last 500 years says no, and the burden of proof is on the pessimists to explain why this time, the pattern that is held for 5 centuries will suddenly reverse. VII. How to position yourself for what's coming. So, if fear is the wrong response, what's the right one? Here's what I'd suggest. 1. Use the tools. Today, not tomorrow. This is the single most important thing you can do. Don't read another article about AI. Open Grok, Claude, or ChatGPT and give it a real task from your actual work, something you'd normally spend an hour on. The gap between people who talk about AI and people who use AI daily is enormous. Cross that gap. 2. Think with, not instead of. The frame that will serve you best is not, will AI replace me, but what can I do with AI that I couldn't do before? This is the difference between a bank teller in 1980 thinking, the ATM is taking my job, and thinking, the ATM is handling the boring stuff, so I can actually help customers with complex problems. One framing leads to panic. The other leads to a promotion. 3. Expand your ambition. Here's something subtle that nobody's talking about. AI should make you more ambitious, not less. If it now takes you 2 hours to do what used to take 20, the correct response isn't to work 2 hours and call it a day. It's to ask, what was I unable to attempt before that I can attempt now? What project was too expensive? What idea was too complex? The people who will do extraordinarily well in the AI era are the ones who use the leverage to aim higher, not the ones who use it to coast. 4. Invest in what AI can't do. AI is phenomenal at generating, summarizing, analyzing, and pattern matching. It is not good yet at original judgment, deep relationship building, physical world problem solving, moral reasoning, cultural intuition, or leading people through ambiguity. Double down on those skills. They become more valuable as AI handles everything else. 5. Study history and refuse to repeat it. Read the pessimist's archive. Study the Luddites. Read Bastiat. Understand that the fear you're feeling has been felt by millions of people before you, across centuries, and that it has always been wrong at scale. This doesn't mean change won't be painful for some people in the short term. It will. Transitions are real. But the macro trajectory of every major technological shift in human history has been more prosperity, more opportunity, more human flourishing. Bet on that pattern. It has a centuries-long track record. IX, the real risk isn't AI, it's your mindset. Let me leave you with this. The people who will be harmed by AI aren't the ones whose current jobs get disrupted. Disruption is temporary. People retool, pivot, and find new opportunities, as they always have. The skilled weavers who adapted to factory work found higher wages. The bank tellers who shifted to relationship banking found more meaningful work. The travel agents who became digital marketing consultants found bigger markets. The people who will genuinely be harmed are the ones who adopt the fixed pie mindset, the ones who see only the scene, the ones who, like Queen Elizabeth in 1589, look at an incredible tool and see only the threat to the status quo, and in doing so, miss the greatest expansion of human capability in their lifetime. Bastiat wrote his essay in 1850, but the lesson is timeless. The bad economist, the bad thinker, confines himself to the visible effect. He sees the job disappearing and declares catastrophe. The good thinker takes into account both the effects that can be seen and those that must be foreseen. He sees the job disappearing and asks, what new thing is this making possible? Where is the unseen opportunity forming? What can I do now that I couldn't do before? That question, what is this making possible, is the most valuable question you can ask right now. About AI, about your career, about your life. The knitting machine didn't ruin England. It made it the wealthiest nation on earth. The power loom didn't destroy the textile industry. It expanded it beyond anyone's imagination. The computer didn't end employment. It created the modern economy. AI won't shrink your future if you refuse to let fear shrink your vision. Conor